What do you think about Lane Kiffin? I asked you this earlier today. What is your opinion of Lane Kiffin? We've done this with a few head coaches. I figured it was Lane Kiffin's turn in the court of public opinion. I had one of the most unexpected realizations of my college football life today, and that is July 6th, 2023, the college football public not only doesn't despise Lane Kiffin anymore, you guys have totally flipped. You like him now, not just in Oxford, Mississippi, not just at his dinner table, in his home at Thanksgiving, not just those closest to him. No, a large chunk, a majority chunk, believe it or not, of the college football public likes Lane Kiffin. His approval rating is probably higher than anyone who's about to run for the election. How did this happen? In what world did this ever happen? Now, I do need to fill you in on how I feel about him. I never switched over to the, ooh, I hate Lane Kiffin portion of that, that pie chart that represents the college football public. Now, I've explained to you many times before, I don't get too worked up about these sorts of things. So what bothers many of you oftentimes doesn't bother me. However, as you have accurately pointed out to me, what bothers me sometimes doesn't matter to any of you, and so half of the time it's you telling me to calm down. But with Lane Kiffin, interesting times we're in right now. He has quietly won 18 games the past 2 years over there at Ole Miss. That's the kind of stuff Hugh Freeze did once upon a time, but very hard to do historically over there. They have been portaling extremely well, and unlike some other programs that have portaled well, Ole Miss is not exactly a Tier 1 major league recruiting power. So they've had to do it out of necessity, and they've had to get pretty creative. I'll tell you what else they've done that you're not going to probably read as much about. They've really been at the forefront of NIL, and that doesn't mean just paying players the most money. That means being very smart with your money that you do have, because it's not endless. The resources are not endless, even with major college football programs. He has 3 of the 5 best total yardage seasons ever at Ole Miss. I know some of you laugh at the total yardage statistic. I'm not suggesting it's the end-all, be-all. I'm just saying it's a decent metric that lets me know you've been doing big things offensively. How about that? And so Lane Kiffin's done a lot of good things over there, but there are a lot of coaches out there who win and are hated. So it doesn't matter that he's won more than you're supposed to win at Ole Miss. You can be hated and win. How in the world did Lane Kiffin go from being public enemy number 1 in college football circles to all of a sudden being liked by a majority of the fans of this sport, even ones who were agnostic to Ole Miss? There was a wild theory floated around the office today, and at first I dismissed it, but then it started to grow on me. What if, and just humor me now, just hear me out, what if Lane Kiffin did not make a face turn at all? What if society just turned heel and gravitated towards Lane Kiffin? Paper pop. Minds are blown. For those of you who don't watch pro wrestling, face turn just means becoming a good guy. It looks like on the surface, Lane Kiffin became a good guy. How else do you explain a guy that used to not be liked all of a sudden becoming liked? Well, it seems like there's only one explanation. Lane Kiffin went good. But there's another explanation. And this was a theory that was bouncing around the meeting table today when we were putting the show together, and that is, what if society just kind of went heel? What a theory that is. I don't know how I feel about it. It's only been a few hours since it was presented to me, but it's not the craziest thing in the world. Maybe some things you used to just not like, you all of a sudden like. It's not quite as serious as I'm making it sound, mind you. So, if Kiffin's family's listening, no, it's not that big a deal. He's okay. But society turning heel. Well, let's nail this down a little bit. What does that actually mean? What do you remember about him? There are a lot of people listening right now. There's some people watching right now. Maybe you're even watching live. What do you think about when I mention Lane Kiffin? And a lot of you who maybe are in the boat I'm talking about, you don't mind him. Maybe you're apathetic towards him. Maybe you even like him now, but you remember a time where you did not like him. What didn't you like about him? And what changed? You have to answer that for me in the comment section. I'm not going to be able to answer that for you, but I have found when I do this little test case study on people and I ask them, what do you remember? Like, what comes to your mind when you think about Lane Kiffin? They think about either rumors off the field or scoring a ton of points or clipboard thrown up in the air, or 5-15, I think was the record in the NFL, or attempting a half a mile long field goal. These sorts of things come up. My mind goes back a little bit further. When you mention Lane Kiffin to me, my mind goes to 2009. My mind goes to him being hired as the head football coach at the University of Tennessee. And I'll never forget how crazy it was. Kiffin comes in, and he does two things. He quickly realizes who's about to be running the conference for the next decade to 2 decades. And it wasn't the guy running the conference at that present moment. The guy running the conference at that moment was Urban Meyer. The guy Kiffin looked at as the future was Nick Saban. And so even though Kiffin got hired at Alabama's rival, Kiffin starts praising Saban every chance he can get, and he starts going scorched earth on Urban Meyer and calling the guy out. It kind of felt personal. It was almost like you asked, man, what does Lane Kiffin know about Urban Meyer that the rest of us don't know? What's being said about Urban Meyer? What's known about him behind the scenes? Anyway, so I'll let history judge that for itself. Both sides of that equation, by the way, the Saban and Urban Meyer portion of the equation. But I remember that. I remember Bama and Florida are about to play in the SEC championship game. ESPN brings Kiffin to Atlanta to be the guest picker, I think, on College Game Day. I'm in a hotel room. I'm in the Omni Hotel. I'm looking down over Olympic Centennial Park where they're actually having that show live, but I'm also watching it on my TV here. And I remember even then, Kiffin is talking about how much better a coach Saban is. The better coached team is going to win today, and that's Alabama. And by the way, they did. And by the way, they were. I remember that. And that's what made it crazy all those years later when he goes off and the USC thing happens, the NFL things happened, and he comes back and he gets a shot at Alabama. That's where it started. That's where the image rehabilitation started. And it wasn't without a bumpy road over there. No one would suggest otherwise. I think what people see with Lane Kiffin is that he grew up, but he didn't get old. You know how hard that is? Immunity. You know how hard that is to do? To grow up, but not get old in the process? A lot of folks grow up. They also get old as they're doing it. Don't get old, kids. Grow up, but don't get old. Stay young. Keep your wheels in motion. Those are the words of the great Don Williams. Look him up. He's already passed. Great songwriter, great singer, unmistakable voice. And those are lyrics of one of his songs, accurately titled Stay Young. That's what Lane Kiffin's kind of done. So he has the double appeal now about himself. He's got that appeal of a dude who's corrected himself. He's got his wagon back up on the path, but he can still hang with you in a conversation if you're 22 years old and not skip a beat. So he feels like he straddles both sides of that fence. And as I said, he's not doing it as this little feel-good story. They're winning. He's put together a really good program over there. And the other most common piece of feedback I got when I asked today, what do you think about Lane Kiffin, was, I think he wants to be the next head coach at Alabama. And friends, when you say that about Lane Kiffin, when you say that you think he wants to be the next head coach at Alabama, I have this to say. I completely and wholeheartedly agree with you.